One of the most egregious crimes against humanity has been uncovered in Britain, and it's barely making the news. A report so gruesome, so horrific, that it's almost impossible to reconcile with the fact that it actually happened. So we're talking about it. It took a crowd-funded inquiry paid for by ordinary people and led by a survivor to force a reckoning with the organised grooming and trafficking of children across British towns for decades. The police, in most cases, criminalised the girls instead of the men who raped them. The councils and the agencies paid to protect them looked away for decades. Why? Because they feared being seen as racist. Hannah Arendt spent her life trying to explain how atrocity became ordinary, and her conclusion was uncomfortable. The greatest enabler of evil is rarely the monster. It is the ordinary person who decides that the discomfort of speaking is worse than the cost of staying silent. The people who have built entire public identities on misogyny, on human rights, on protecting the vulnerable, have been almost silent on one of the largest sustained abuse scandals of the century. The feminists, the human rights organisations, and the activists who can find a microphone for almost anything. Hannah, Abby, Clem, Julia Gillard, Maureen Faruqi, anyone? To speak about this honestly, we must acknowledge the cultural and ideological pattern running through a large share of the offenders. Naming a cultural pattern is not the same as condemning an entire race or faith. Most people from any background cause no harm. So let me be precise. This was not a handful of isolated offenders. Organised networks of predominantly Pakistani Muslim men spent years targeting children, overwhelmingly young, white, working class girls, some as young as 11. The pattern was almost industrial in its consistency and scale. Girls were slowly fed alcohol and drugs until they became dependent and isolated. They'd be collected from school gates and care homes in taxis and passed between grown men, raped by groups of them in flats, hotels, and back rooms, and filmed so that the footage could be used as blackmail. Girls were trafficked between cities like freight. Many pressured to convert to Islam, children became pregnant, and they were raped by dogs, and they had their genitals mutilated by broken whiskey bottles. And when these girls finally went to the people that were paid to protect them, the police, the counsellors, and the social workers, they were treated as the fucking problem. They were written off as troublemakers, whilst the men who raped them kept their taxi licenses and their freedoms. You do not get to grandstand about freedom of religion and freedom of expression and then refuse to discuss the consequences when a subculture turns them against children. Either our compassion for the vulnerable is consistent, or we admit it was always selective. And please spare me the argument about the exact number. 250,000 or one, the figure doesn't change the moral weight. One child trafficked and raped is an obscenity. The only thing the number tells us is how long people were willing to look away. The West is sick. We have abandoned morality, and every attempt to say so is dismissed by progressives cosplaying as humanitarians when really all they are is tolerant of evil.